Hey, what's going on, Warrior Rising? This is Reggie Ordonez, and I'm here for another office hours. And I'm really excited to just dig into everything that we got going on. So, first and foremost, so you know, quarter one this year has been all about marketing. So, if you've been paying attention to our social media posts, our master classes that we've been having, the topics have been all about marketing, right? So, we wanted to focus on that for the first quarter of 2025. And, you know, this is kind of how I look at this. So one day, some of you already know how, some of you don't. But whenever you read an income statement or you read your profit and loss statement, as it's called, in other circles, whatever, right? Everything flows through, right? So you start with marketing, and marketing is the bridge to revenue or your sales, right? So it's the very top line is sales, and then your expenses come out and you get all the way to your net at the bottom. But what's important for me is that you understand that marketing is the bridge to revenue. So before we could ever really start with anything, we kind of want to understand our customers. We want to understand our competitors. We want to understand how to position ourselves, how to message correctly to the audience that we serve, what the different touch points are. And that's what I'm going to focus on today. And those five things that I just talked about are what's really encompassing a brand strategy, and brand is much different than marketing, but it's the same. Marketing is more of the science behind things, and for sure there's some art there, right? There's some creative direction there and everything else, like no doubt whatsoever. But there's a art and a science to marketing. When you start talking about brand is very much rooted in some science, behavioral science, psychology in some senses, but it's really a gut feeling. And I want you to understand that that starts with a customer. And it starts with understanding your competitors. It starts with how you live in the minds of your customers. And then we take those things and we craft a message. So that's what I focus on. That's what I do for a living when I'm not on the clock with Warrior Rising leading programs. I have my own organization called Forward Brands, and that's really what I'm helping with is that brand strategy and how you bring all that to life. One thing that really, for lack of a better term, it kind of drives me a little bit nuts, if I'm being really honest with you. It's not necessarily the founders that drive me nuts whenever we talk about this, because I'm a founder myself. But what I'm talking about is the marketing agencies that are out there that will work with somebody whenever they haven't really dialed in a brand strategy yet. So if you're one of those people listening to this right now and you're like, hey, I've actually done that. I've gone to a marketing agency. I've tried to pump up some ads. I've tried to, do some different things. I've tried different tactics, and none of it has worked. And I believe that marketing is just a waste of time because none of it has worked. What I will tell you is that the reason why it hasn't worked is because you haven't started with a brand strategy. And that's the most important thing that you can do. And sure, there's tactics out there that can get you some quick wins, but it'll fizzle, just like the 4th of July. I love me a good 4th of July celebration with fireworks going up everywhere, having a good time. But guess what? Like, you literally light your dollars on fire. Once you see that big bang and it goes away, it was good in the moment, you know, but it doesn't convert to anything after the fact. And that's kind of like what marketing without brand strategy is. You're literally lighting your dollars on fire, trying to make a big bang and it fizzles, and doesn't get you anywhere. So let's talk about how to avoid that. So, brand strategy. Customers are always first. There's a reason why this is in every single entrepreneurship 101 class. There's a reason why it's in every single marketing 101 class, is because everything begins and ends with the customer. Like, that's super, super, super important. And you're like, I know. And if you're one of those people that say but you have failed to deliver into some generating revenue, you know what I mean? Then, like, hey, you need to like listen, because we haven't learned all there is to learn yet about some of this stuff. And it's critical that you understand this. So whenever I talk about knowing your customer, I'm not just talking about the demographics. And this happens all the time. People will be like, I serve 25 to 34-year-olds, particularly males, particularly in suburban environments, particularly. And it's like, okay, dude, I get that, but what is it that they're trying to accomplish? All right, what is it that they're trying to accomplish? So this is where we need to dive in. When it comes to understanding your customers, I want to know a few things. One, what are the things that they're struggling with? Number one, there's something inside of them that they are struggling with, or something inside of them that they can't fix. Like there's a problem worth solving out there. And we got to understand what that is through their eyes, not ours. All right. The second thing we need to understand is where are they trying to go? All right. Where are they trying to go? What is it that they're trying to accomplish? So they have a goal, they have the end in mind, and for whatever reason, there's something that's just getting in the way, and they can't seem to get there on their own. And that's the second, right? The third is like, why? Like I need to understand why. Like you have something you're trying to accomplish, some sort of job. Some we call them customer jobs. That's actually what some folks say. The author's a strategizer that are really awesome. That created the business model canvas in that book, Business Model Generation. They call it customer jobs, but it's they're trying to accomplish something. So an example of this is like let's just say that I, Reggie, am trying to get in shape. I'm tired of feeling like doo doo, right? I'm tired of feeling bad, and it's like, okay, well, why aren't you working out? You know how to work out. Like it's not a matter of not being able to work out. I was a former Marine, like I do jujitsu, like all this different stuff, and it's like, well, why are you feeling like that? And it's like, well, maybe I just don't have the time. I don't feel like I have the time to work out. Maybe I don't feel like I have the accountability that I need to work out. So my problem isn't that I don't know how to work out. It's really accountability and some other things, right? And then it's like, okay, well, um, where am I trying to go? Right? Keeping it lock and step with what I'm talking about here. I am trying to get in better shape. But then you got to ask why, right? Why are you trying to get in better shape? Is it really because I want to feel good and live until I'm 80? Like maybe, but maybe there's some other reasons, right? Maybe it's a status thing. Maybe it's because I'm in sales and I need to be able to like look good. I don't know. Like everyone's got a mass want of a private desire. That's what Eugene Schwartz said. He wrote a book called Breakthrough Advertising that is one of the greatest books written of all time on copywriting. And we talk about this very specifically of like everybody has that private desire of a massive want. So, what is that desire, right? So, you need to speak to that and understand where they're trying to go. And then you could start to really understand what else is out there, which is the customer, right? I mean, sorry, which is the competition. So, what else is out there? Sure, there's gyms on every single corner, there's coaching programs on every single corner, there's people doing things all the time online, digitally. But do they really understand me and where I'm trying to go? Right. So I might spend time browsing the internet and looking at different things. And there's some stuff that I'm really looking for. One, I want somebody that's credible. I want somebody that has authority. They've been there and they've done that. If there's someone that's been there and they've done that, then that means I'm already starting to trust you. So that's a very big deal. The second thing, I want to believe that you have a solution for me. It's like, oh my gosh, this person's speaking my language and they're reading my mail because everything that's on this is something that I'm dealing with, right? So, is there a market for executives that are busy, that don't have time to work out, or busy professionals that don't feel like they have time to work out and they're just behind their laptops all day and not really getting the fresh air they need, right? They don't have the accountability. They need that accountability. So, if you can find that that person exists out there, you're differentiating yourself now from another gym. You are still doing fitness, but you're doing it in a different way. So I got to understand what else is out there to ensure that this is maybe a viable market to go after. And that doesn't mean that there's not going to be somebody doing this, but it's what is it about you that's going to attract them? So you always need to position yourself as that guide that's going to help this person that you have in mind. And remember, you got to study the competition, you got to study your customer, and you bring those together and you start to like put them together and assess, dissect, and understand where the gaps are and how you could fill those gaps and those needs, right? Then it comes to the position. So, positioning is nothing more than whenever someone comes across your brand, what is it that is so cool about you that gives them a gut feeling that they trust you, one, but how do you live in the minds of that customer? I mean, I should have just said that. Positioning is about how you live in the mind of that customer. So, um, is it trust that they're after? I mean, as you start to understand customer and competition, you're going to understand how you need to live in the brand in the mind of that customer, right? So if this is an executive coaching for fitness executives, all those different things, then it needs to be probably luxurious. So whenever they look at you, do they see luxury? Do they see a price point that makes sense with the way that they're envisioning your brand? Do you come across as authoritative? Do you come across as credible? Do you come across in all those manners in a way to like make it mesh and make it work? That's a big deal. If you're doing that, then you're getting it right. If you're confusing them, then it's not going to work, right? So colors come into play here. Your logo comes into play here. Your visual identity comes into play here. And so a lot of entrepreneurs will start with logos and name and all this, but like y'all, like I'm telling you right now, you need to understand customers and competitors and positioning before you really start working on all these other things. Because if you're trying to attract a high level client, a high tier client that is willing to pay a lot of money for your products or your services, then you better show up in that way. And it needs to make sense and they need to be able to see it. Number four is messaging. So craft messages based on the three things that we just talked about, right? I have a very simple framework that I use for messaging. I do a lot of copywriting and I love it. It's something that I enjoy. It's artistic and it's still science at the same time because really what it is it's persuasive writing, right? So you always got to kind of address. This is where we start getting into headers and subheaders, body, um, calls to action, like all these different things. And how I write is different, whether I'm writing for a sales sheet or if I'm writing for a website or if I'm writing an ad, like whatever it is, it's going to be a little different, but not much. There's some different formulas that are out there that exist. You can do a quick Google search on copywriting formulas, but don't start doing this if you don't understand these other things. Like I'm telling you, it's not going to work unless you understand these other things. So I have some very simple stuff that I use, but I will tell you, it's always the same every time. I'm talking about the problem. I'm talking about the potential solution. I'm talking about the stakes of action and inaction, right? Action and inaction. I'm going to do a call to action. I'm going to show them really quickly how it works. I'm going to give them like how it works in 3 easy steps. And then I'm going to give like once again a call to action, like call this number, email this, click this button, download this thing, whatever it is, whatever you're trying to get that customer to accomplish. But it's got to resonate and it's got to be simple. It's got to be so clear that they're not having to do mental gymnastics to understand what it is that you do, right? Like that's kind of a big deal. We don't want to do that. We want it to be simple, we want it to be clean, and we want them to understand exactly what we do. All right. And then you have a call to or your touch points. Your touch points are a big deal. So a touch point is nothing more than your brand's interactions with that customer. So what are some interactions that you could think of, off the top of your head? For me, one is, well, my sales process is going to be a touch point. How do I show up? Um, the other one is social media, right? I mean, I'm going to be talking through social media. I'm probably going to be interacting with customers through social media. Another way, another touch point is email. No doubt, email is a big one for me. It's actually my favorite. My favorite channel is email. How I communicate, how I deliver value, what it is that I do, how my brand shows up with these different touch points in person, whether that be expos, whether that be workshops, whether that be conferences, maybe you're sponsoring something. Like these are all touch points, and your website is a touch point. Like literally anywhere that a customer can find you or see you, how they're interacting with your brand, that's a touch point. So you need to be very thorough on how you show up consistently, right? For your customer. Don't confuse them. Keep it consistent, keep it real, and stay true to your brand, you know. Some other things that happen with brand strategy, that kind of come naturally, like brand drives everything, right? When you understand your customers and competitors, you start to understand your differentiation, your position, all these different things. You're gonna eventually create some core values. You're gonna create a mission statement and vision statement and all these things, and I hope that that resonates not only with your customer, but it resonates with you and your core essence of your brand. Like you're going to solve like these specific things for the market, but you're actually passionate about it as a company too. So mission, vision, core values, super important. How you show up when you start hiring employees, and whenever you start having culture, your brand drives that too. Brand drives absolutely everything. The way you hire, the way you fire, all of it is going to come back to brand. So be consistent and show up in the same way. Don't try to piecemeal it all together as you go. Like, sure, there's a time we got to execute, and sometimes things don't always go to plan, but it's always nice to give yourself some handrails and at least an azimuth to follow with a destination in mind. And there's things that'll keep you on track or off track as you go through this journey. Don't just be out there like a sailor, on a ship with no direction, just floating in the ocean, not knowing where you're going. You got to understand where you're at. Speaking of the ocean, this kind of stuff, when you work in this way, when you start to understand what your offerings are based on all these things we've been talking about, it keeps you accountable to what you do. One of the some of the best advice that I've ever got, because I used to be all over the place, was don't boil the ocean, right? Like you're never going to boil the ocean, right? You gotta start small, and that's not because I'm small minded. It just makes sense to find something that works and then start to replicate on that and start to build smart, because it's going to be your dollars, it's going to be your time, it's going to be your effort, it's going to be your energy, it's going to be your sacrifice. So it's very, very important to make sure that you're firing on all cylinders and being efficient with your time and your money, right? That's a big, big deal. So, all this to say, we just went over like the big components of brand strategy. How that ties into the rest of marketing will be number six, which I said five, but there is a sixth one, and that's like tactics. So when you have those five things that we discussed today, I feel more comfortable going into an actual marketing plan, right? Or even marketing strategy at that point. Because now that you've got the key components, let's go. Let's start having some fun. Let's start figuring out what's making people click on those emails, what's making people convert to being your customer. That's a big deal, right? What's making people convert to that email list? Like all these things. You're nailing the messaging, you're nailing it. Don't boil the ocean. You're going to be just fine. So, for the rest of the year, right, as we do more and more office hours, what you'll see is themes. We're going to try to stay true to those themes. Next quarter is all about sales. So, sales will be a big one, like myself, like no one teaches you how to sell unless you were in sales from the beginning. They don't teach that in school, and every entrepreneur needs to know how to sell, right? You're always selling. And whenever we hear sales, it feels all gross and, disgusting, but the reality is it's not. It's a skill. And if you think about it like you're just trying to help people accomplish what it is that they've set out to accomplish, then it's not so bad. Everything is an exchange. Marketing is nothing but an exchange of value. And in this case, I'm giving somebody something that would benefit them in exchange for money, right? That's what marketing is. Sales is the closing thing, and that's what's going to be revenue, which is the lifeblood of your business. It's what it's going to pay for your company. It's what's going to pay for your salaries. It's what's going to pay for your benefits. So you can go out and make a business that you believe in, and you can hire people that you want to work with and do the things you've always wanted to do. So it always starts right here, right now, where we are. So don't ever think that it doesn't, right? So it's been real. It's been fun. There's going to be some articles that will drop in the description of YouTube, right? And I think we got a few articles. I think I've written a couple about how to conduct a killer customer discovery interview. So I'm telling you to like understand your customer. One of the best ways to do that is to actually sit down and talk with them. And I'm not just talking about one or two. I'm talking about as many as you can, right? That's a big deal to go out and sit down with your ideal client and talk to them because they're going to tell you things that you never thought of. And it's always better to listen. Don't talk so much. Listen to what they're saying. Don't try to drive the conversation based on what you believe the answer is. Just listen, and people will give you answers and people will give you direction that you would have never found out on your own. Surveys can work, but I'm telling you, nothing beats an actual in person interview. Another thing that you can do is go scroll and get on Reddit and read the threads and the sub threads about a specific topic out there and use that as fact finding. Go to the Amazon reviews, go to these other things to study your competitors. It's really easy to do it in that manner and make sure that you're capturing enough to actually look at and dissect so it comes clean to you that it's like, yeah, you know what? There's a gap here. And I believe that I'm positioned to fill that gap. So that's what it's all about, y'all. So have fun. Thanks for tuning in. It's been a good time, y'all. I'll see you soon.